This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone, welcome to this video on a bit of modern politics, world events, history, and the divine world of light. I wish to take this video to the world as a message from the heavenly realms about what's going on, what we can make of it all, and what we should do in response to it all. Things are becoming very different in America. It's going in a very, very exclusionary, very dark and racist direction. And it's about to hurt a lot of people. People who are marginalized, the black people, my black brothers and sisters, people of color, our trans community, all gay, lesbian, bisexual, alternative people. There is being a target put upon all these people by the motions of the American politics. And I wanted to use this as a moment to help clarify what's going on and to hopefully give hope and light to people who are concerned about where things are heading. So you see here on the screen, I have America and the fall of the Roman Empire. Before I was even in college, I always felt that America was Rome 2.0. That when Rome fell, it went through the Christian phase, the Holy Roman Empire phase, which was the reincarnation of Rome through a more Catholic meaning universal, using a universal religious doctrine to take over the world. And then before the US came to be, between the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire and the US, there was this whole movement in Europe to control all European nations and eventually all other continents with a Christian based theology where there's Christianity and the heathens. So we have the Christians on one side and the heathens on the other side, and this kind of battle. At first in Europe, the heathens would have been other Europeans, those who didn't follow Christianity, the native people, the Druids, the Wiccans, the Earth peoples, and then this whole idea of heretics and crusades, all in an attempt to make New Rome as a Christian empire the only empire in Europe. And then when they began to stumble upon other nations in their uh, raping expeditions to South America, to Africa, they began to impose this very toxic view of religion on the lives of other peoples around the world. And then America came to be from Europe, mostly England. And so we have, to me, Rome continuing first as the Holy Roman Empire in the Christian sense, followed by the Christianization of Europe, followed by the Christianization of other continents of color in particular, followed by the American Empire. So to me, it's Rome reincarnating itself over and over and over. And the key with Rome is it was founded by Romulus and Remus, who were suckled by a she-wolf. So the beginnings of Rome, of course, began in Greece, Democratic Republic of Greece. So we can say that Rome is an iteration of Greece, but that's a different conversation. But what I want to discuss today is how what I'm seeing in US politics, this kind of drive, I don't want to call it a strongman dictatorship because I don't think such men are strong. It's going to a violent man direction where this violent leader is picked by the government to lead it. And what we're seeing today is nothing new. That's the point of the video. It's nothing new. And there are many, many traits similar to what's happening in the US today and what happened at the end of the Roman Empire, at the very fall of the Roman Empire. So I'm not going to drag this out into a very long historical discourse, but I want to give just a few basic sketch notes on history and try to make a few comparisons. Then I want to show the astrology charts of these different times of history and the patterns I've noticed. And then I'll end with the light of hope, that there's light still inside of good people, fair people, kind and considerate people, and that we have to let that light shine. When it's the darkest, it's time to shine the brightest. It's no time to dim your light, but it's time to really radiate your genius and your brilliance. So, at the fall of Rome, there was a man named Marcus Cassius. He was the absolute richest man in ancient Rome. And he would be equivalent to, let's say, the richest man in America today, in the world today, Elon Musk. So Cassius was the Elon Musk of his day. And he, with a man named Pompey Magnus, were very tired of their tax money being used to pay for what's called bread. In other words, the Roman rulers created the Colosseum, and the Colosseum was the center of what's called circus and bread. Circus meaning entertain the masses to distract them from how you're fleecing them and manipulating politics, and give them free bread while they're there, like free food, drinks, and consignments. Okay, but the Elon Musk of the day, Crassus, along with Pompey Magnus, did not want to have their tax money paying for this free food. Okay, he didn't want this to be the bread for all. So what they did was they wanted to end the public's voice in politics and in political decision making. And so they began to buy out senators in the Senate. And the senators were weak and they buckled. Many, many buckled under the greed, under their own greed from this billionaire of his times. And he used his money to buy off these senators in order to have them block policies so policies can't get passed that help the people, and to promote the authoritarian popularism, uh, and to gridlock Senate legislation. Now, this had an agenda. The agenda was to A, give the rich power over legislation and policy, as well as to make the Roman people feel very disgusted and frustrated with their government, which at the time of Pompey and Crassus, it was a democratic republic. Okay? But these two very rich men, wanted to turn it from a democratic republic, a democracy republic, a democracy for the public people, into an oligarchy where the rich make policy and the policies are made for the rich at the expense of the common person. Okay, so it was important for them to get people disgruntled about democratic government and replace it with a violent man government, what's called a Caesarian government, which came to be called the Caesarian government. What they call a strong man, I call a violent man, and have that man put in place of a democratic government, and he will make policies that benefit the rich at the expense of everyone else in the country. Okay? So, again, the billionaires of the time used three things to evade um, having the public, having the common people have power. Okay? And to replace the government with a sycophantic government. It's really called a kakistocracy, which means government by the most inept. Yes, kakistocracy, that's the word. Government by the inept, the least qualified, which we're seeing happening in modern politics. And he wanted to also install what's called a kleptocracy, like kleptomaniac. Someone that grabs things and steals illegally, of course, things. Well, a kleptocracy is when the rich start fleecing and stealing money from the government and government policies and programs for their own pockets. So the three things they did to get power was they polarized everyone to gridlock legislation. Okay, they began to polarize parties and people in society, classes pitting one against the other. And this tension between the classes battle made the rich able to create that chaos, then install policies that prevented forward progress for the populace while they're fleecing the government. Secondly, they made an erosion of democratic norms and institutions, the norms of compromise, the norms of being collegiate with each other, working together. That was all destroyed. No crossing the party line, so to speak. And the concentration of power in a small elite who controlled Rome's politicians. If you're listening with one ear in the past and one ear in the present, you hear the similarities. Okay? Now, it took decades from the beginning of this by Pompey and Marcus Crassus to begin this process, but then they really set in motion the beginning of the end of Rome. Then Julius Caesar came into the scene as the violent man who ended up crossing the Rubicon, bringing the Roman army to attack Rome itself. He seized Rome and eventually bullied himself into being the emperor in perpetuity. And when he wanted that level of power, where there would no longer be elections, there would no longer be really a need for a Senate in any practical manner, that's when the Roman senators on the Ides of March stabbed him so many times, dozens of times, including Brutus, in the Senate halls, killing him. And then later on, you had other Roman emperors decades later, like Caligula and Augustus Caesar, put the nail in the Roman coffin of democracy. Okay, now let's start to make connections between then and now, which may already be quite obvious. So I mentioned that Crassus was equivalent to Elon Musk, and we're seeing this gathering of oligarchical billionaires and the super rich into the halls of government, dictating policy, controlling the leader in many, many ways. And in the same way, they're cutting out all the bread. The bread would be the social policies, Medicare, um, free public education, welfare, Social Security, what they call these free programs, free bread, they don't want this to happen. And while they're doing this, fleecing these institutions, they're grabbing the money that was going to these social institutions and social programs for their pockets. And so now we have a violent man in policy in the White House, and he's slicing human rights, slicing human rights, slicing democratic norms, just like was done in Europe, in Rome, in Europe. The essence of the modern version, there's a few distinctions I want to touch on. One is this version of it is blatantly a racist movement. It's an attack against people of color. And the desire to establish white supremacy as the main political energy of the nation. Also, it's people are calling America moving into a dictatorial, totalitarian direction, which I would somewhat agree with, to a very well, not somewhat, to a large degree, agree with. Except there's a one little detail I have to think through. In most dictatorship rises, there was an opposing party. But what I'm seeing in this US version, there really isn't an opposing party. The legislative party of the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, they're all under Trump. So he really does not have any opposing party. Democrats are being rather weak, not messaging well, not firm in their stance. Democrats are also voting along with Republicans to remove rights. So it's they're kind of folding, or they're being kind of weak or lackadaisical at this critical time in American history. Now, what I want to also add is that historically, we have seen democracies go through these kinds of transitions. One of two things inevitably happens. It either goes through this growth pain and flips back into a democracy, or it flips into a dictatorship. Okay? This oligarchical movement that we're in now, where the billionaires are the ones ruling everything, this has happened before in America, right before the Civil War, right before World War II, where we went more towards a violent man direction. And in both those cases, he was flipped into another democratic stage, not into a dictatorial stage. This is another time this is happening. But the oligarchical phase is a transition phase between either a new level of democracy or the flipping into a dictatorship, into fascism. And so we have to wait and see which way it will fall. But this oligarchical phase of billionaires ruling cannot last, because inevitably the masses of people get very, very ticked off that the rich are fleecing them, and they will tend to rebel. This is a historical trait of democracies devolving into oligarchies, and then either flipping back to a democracy or flipping completely into its opposite, which is the fascist direction. Okay? So that's my little history review. And I'll just mention that around the Reagan era, this whole idea of what's happening in the US far right wing Republican Party began around the 1970s. It got a lot of steam with Reagan, and it got really kicked off with Newt Gingrich, who began to do a lot of things like blocking policy, filibustering, a lot of things that we saw happening in Rome. So I just wanted to compare the similarities between billionaire Romans and billionaire Americans, billionaire Romans controlling violent men and the Senate in Rome, and billionaires in the USA controlling violent men and Congress and the House and Senate and all that governmental structure. How oligarchs were ruling in Rome. They're ruling now to a large degree in the USA. Reminding you, oligarchy is a transitional stage between a declining democracy going either towards a new democratic level or towards a fascist level. And we're seeing very fascist traits in our government in the USA here. And there is a conclave of, it's like a mafioso group of sorts of government fascists around the world working together, not as an axis or not even as alliance, but just as transactional support bros, trying to convert the entire planet towards a fascist direction. So this is a world movement. We had Brexit, Hungary. We keep having this around the world. And once the USA goes in this direction, it has giant ripple effects around the world. So this is really the test of democracy to see, well, I have this image here to show how Rome, the Colossus of Rome and the Statue of Liberty were very similar. But I want to show an image here of, we've got to be careful that this does not happen. Okay. What you're seeing on the bottom of the garbage, what I say, may this not happen, in the sense that may this not be the destruction of all these poor innocent souls. Okay. But you see there's a pyramid in the background full of the sunlight of Ra, which I'll come to in a few moments. Let's go back to our audio video. And now I want to go into what I discovered when I did some work on the astrology charts of Crassus. You see here up here, Crassus is the inner wheel, this inner wheel. And the middle wheel is Trump's inauguration in 2017, this wheel here. And the outer wheel is Trump's inauguration 2025. And since I suspected that what's happening today is very similar to what happened at the fall of Rome, I said, let me see, are there any patterns I could perhaps clock? And I found a few. First of all, what you find common in these three wheels is a connection between the planet Nu, we call Neptune, this blue planet here, Nu here, this is Crassus's wheel, blue Neptune here in Donald Trump's 2017 inauguration, and Nu here in Donald Trump's 2025 inauguration. Notice the nodes, this red symbol and this purple symbol. The red symbol is called the south node of the moon, and the blue one is called the north node of the moon. We call the red one the venomous serpent goddess Watchet, or called Ketu in the Dravidian Indian astrology. And this purple one is called, in ancient Kemet or Egypt, Nechebet, known as Rahu. in India. So the red is Wachit Ketu, the purple is Nekabet Rahu, and the nodes are known for rebellion, destruction, deception, toxicity, poison. Okay? It's a snake. It's called the red symbol here is called the south node or the snake's tail, and the purple is called the snake's head. So we're talking about snake energy, venomous energy. They are very dangerous points in the sky, particularly in political levels. Okay? Notice that in every wheel, there's either a new south node here of new and the south node of Watchet, again new and south node of Watchet in 2017, and new and north node and Watchet in 2017. But even though we have north node, opposite is the south node still affecting new. So it seems that it's either, and I just did this research a few days ago, I haven't really gone into it deeply, but the first pattern I noticed is that new is somehow connecting with the lunar nodes, particularly Watchet. Okay, now new or Neptune is the planet of, it's a very evil planet. I think it's very undervalued as to how wicked it is. It is the planet of deception, traps, and things out to get you you do not see. The danger of new Neptune is you just don't see it coming. It's like a panther in a tree at night. There's nowhere you're going to see it. And the next thing you know, you're pounced upon. So new with the nodes in these three charts, and Crassus at the same time as Julius Caesar, so it's about the same time, right? 74 BCE. We're seeing here with the rise of Crassus, the billionaire of his time, the Elon Musk of his time, this planet of deception, erosion, dissolving, hiding, lurking, poisoning, undermining with the nodes was dominant, was active in all three situations of Trump's two inaugurations and Crassus's undermining of democracy. The next thing I noticed was that the planet Bennu, the black planet here, Pluto, here, here, and here, had some hard angle, meaning an opposition or square, 180 degrees opposition or 90 degrees square, to Bess, Uranus, this red planet here. Okay, so here we see, if we put our finger here, count as 1, 2, 3, 4. When you put your finger on one and you slide 2, 3, 4, anything in that fourth position would be squaring. That's a hard angle. So here we have, let's do here. Also, a conjunction can be considered a hard angle, particularly if it's malefic planets. Okay, so we have a Bennu Uranus, Bennu Bess, Pluto Uranus hard contact. In Crassus's chart around Julius Caesar's time, they're conjunct. In Donald Trump's 2017 middle chart, they are square. In Donald Trump's 2025 inauguration, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're square again. Even though the orbs are wide with such massive planetary outer planets, I have noticed as long as they're in hard angle via house, of course, the tighter the orb, the more intense. But I have learned, don't ignore hard angles via house relationships, no matter the orb. And then something strange popped out, which I didn't expect at all. Notice in all three, Ra, Aten Ra the sun is in the goat fish of Capricorn. okay, which is leadership, power. That could be narcissistic, because Ra owns the fifth house of the lion, Leo, we call Atumra, which is the house of narcissism. So we have here now, strangely, that in all three charts, that Aten Ra, the leader, shows narcissistic traits, the sun, the negative sun energy, in the sign of the goatfish, of political structures, political systems. So, whatever that's worth, I'm going to research it more in detail over the next few weeks and months. But these are traits I found quite startling, comparing the violent man, Julius Caesar, and the undermining billionaire, Crassus, with modern day Donald Trump as the Julius Caesar narcissist, malignant narcissist, and the Elon Trump as Crassus, quite paralleling uh, in striking detail. Now, what I want to end with is Ra. I did a reading on all this, and I want to talk about. I meant to put on my screen an image of Ra. Let's see if we can find one here. Let's go to Yahoo Images. Yes. And let's go to Ra. And let's talk about him for a minute. Let's find a lovely picture of him to focus on. This is nice. Okay. Ra. When I asked what to do with all of this change happening in the USA, this is the deity that appeared in the oracle. Ra. I'm going to spend a little time discussing him in some detail. Not too deeply, but enough to hopefully give light and hope to those who are being victimized by this narcissistic movement towards dictatorship. First of all, Ra is often called the sun god. That's not really what he is. He is the lord of the life force that the sun contains. He simply is the electromagnetic energy that runs all biological and natural processes, all biological, nature processes, and spiritual/psychological functioning. He's the EM energy, electromagnetic field. And we say that he would enter the human body, enter the human flesh, and animate it with his electromagnetic fields. Okay? So he's not really the sun god, he's the god of the electromagnetic energy, of which the sun is our local, most powerful container of. And he was called by the Dravidians and the people of India Kundalini. He was called Chi in China. But in the Hindu version, Indian version, Kundalini is a serpent, and you see he has a serpent on his head. That's where they got this from. Now I want to discuss this serpent for a minute and this disc on his head. Okay? Why is it a serpent? Why is the life force, the electromagnetic field that's running your body, running your thoughts, running your emotions, running everything about you, running the planet Earth, running the universe? He also corresponds to radiative and gravitational forces. And he's circular, meaning he deals with torsion, spin, Coriolis effect. Okay, but let's talk about this snake very quickly. This snake represents energy, the energy of the life force, because the snake moves in a sine wave, like a wave of energy, a wave of light or energetic dynamism. And they picked the Kamal, the blacks of Kemet picked this image of a snake because some very, very poisonous and toxic serpents, cobras and asps, etc., when they bite you, it actually feels like you're being electrocuted. You're being shocked. Okay? And so they call it the serpent power. And both the serpent bite and its poison and electrocution target the same part of the nervous system. They paralyze the breathing respiratory nerve center of the pneumogastric vagus nerve. So, cobra venom and lightning strike paralyze the same respiratory nerve in the pneumogastric vagus nerve center. Now, when you are a yogi and you do very dynamic breathing techniques, very active breathing techniques of the belly, and you arouse the Kundalini life force to get that snake moving, and you're pumping your stomach, what's called breath of fire, or Uddiyana Bandha, you eventually get this moment during the breathing process, the fast breathing process, where the pneumogastric nerve locks in the same manner that it locks during envenenation by the cobra or through electrocution, and your solar plexus center locks, paralyzes itself, and that paralysis of the solar plexus through deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve to trigger the frontal cortex of the brain, where the third eye is, where free will is and choices and clarity of thinking and rational thought. Okay? Now, this serpent in Kemet is called Kut or Kuta. Kutalini. You hear the word Kutalini, Kundalini, Kutalini, Kundalini. Okay? And this Kuta represents the part of your spirit where wisdom resides. The serpent of wisdom, the snake of wisdom. Because sometimes when you're struck by enlightenment, this is the snake of enlightened wisdom, so it's the snake of enlightenment. When you receive a flash of enlightenment, an epiphany, it can be like a flash of lightning. And its message of enlightenment can actually shock you, stun you, paralyze you. Okay? Not merely by the depth and unexpectedness of its revelation, but that by when you do this deep breathing, Uddiyana Bandha, breath of fire, for a long time, and the nervous system, vagus nervous system locks, through this vigorous, energetic stirring up of the electromagnetic life force of Ra, called Chi or Prana or Kundalini or Ra, the vagus nerve innervation shocks you into epiphanies of enlightenment. It's such a layered level of biology, nature, physiology, and spirituality. Okay? So we would say the entering of this electromagnetic life force into the human body was called the hours of Ra, the Sesh Amduat, which I am doing classes on in the near future. The book of the 12 hours of Ra. The Kamal say that Ra would enter the Af, the flesh, the corpse, and energize it in the underground world or in the subconscious world. So, the long and short of our discussion here on Ra is that well, I want to add one more thing about Ra, and that's his beautiful daughter, Maat goddess. Let's talk about her very quickly. Let's find a lovely image of her. This will suffice for now. Okay. Maat. Okay. She's the goddess of truth, science equations that run systems in a harmonious, balanced way. She's the goddess of math, science, and all equations, morality, ethics, and abundance, and the economic system of government as an ethical exchange of energy, work, and compensation. Okay? Now, she is said to be the daughter of Ra. She is the daughter of electromagnetic stimulation of the vagus nerve to awaken the frontal brain lobe to enlighten you by giving you an abundance of life force, Ra, Kundalini, or Chi. So, when you do a lot of work with Ra, Kundalini, Chi, or Ashe, you get an abundance of life force, the electromagnetic field gets strong around you, and when done with words of power, Heka, or mantras, it gives you the power to live truth. Now we have to ask, what is truth? Well, truth is a measured reality. You can measure truth like you can measure an inch, a mile, or a yard. It is not subjective, it is objective, meaning measurable. And it is a set of standards imposed upon you by your highest psychology. We call your Ba. We also call Osar. So the divine light in you has a set of standard rules that make you divine. There are these laws that the best, highest part of you, we call Osar, or the divine in you, that part of you follows rules, laws of unity, fairness, justice, cooperation, and oneness. And the laws from that level of your super psychology represent the standard of truth that's universal for all people. Okay? So this is measurable to the Kamal. To other groups, you cannot measure truth. It is subjective. It's my truth versus your truth. To the Kamal, the blacks of ancient Kemet, it was not subjective. It was a measure, like a ruler. An inch is an inch is an inch, whether you're male or female, gay, straight, bi, tall, short, doesn't matter. And so we had a view, unlike the Christian view, where humanity is basically a weak, sin-bound creature, as evidenced by humanity at large, and their salvation is due from some external power, and the penalty for evil doing is from another external power, and the only way to get out of doing evil and being a sinner is to get help from God, conceived as an external, outward, separate part from you. To us, we view the divine as in every being at their highest psychological levels of the masters within, the master consciousness, that we are like the Supreme Being in quality, not quantity. We are all the Supreme Being minus his scope of power. We have divine consciousness exactly equal to the divine consciousness of our Maker, except on a much smaller scale. And unlike having to look for salvation outside of yourself in a church, a temple, a book, or Bible, we find salvation comes from developing the higher psychological centers of the brain and the spirit through sound and lawful behaviors. You save yourself through visualizing sounds and letting those sounds open up your innate, listen to me carefully, innate lawfulness. All the meanness we're seeing, the cruelty against Black people, immigrants, non-white males, non-white people, it's ultimately because the people doing this kind of cruelty have their higher psychological centers slumbering. Their divine centers are slumbering, sleeping, and dead to them. So they act like children. But as you mature up these sounds, there are these sounds we sing. And if you sing them, you start awakening your inner morality, your inner intelligence, your inner fairness. These things are already in you, but you need to have a divine culture, a society that knows how to awaken these innate traits in the higher levels of human psychology. So to me, all this bad behavior, all this meanness and cruelty is the behavior of bully, childlike minds. And if it were possible to get these bullies and these grown children to awaken their higher faculties, they would, these through these sound waves, these words of power, these songs, they will eventually not have to be taught. We're all connected. We need each other. Unity is our strength. Kindness, fairness, justice is the best way to build civilized nations. All of these ideas, these forms, these archetypes are in every human being, but because the leaders of certain cultures, what I call corruptors, not cultures, but corruptors, don't know how to awaken the divine psychological states in their citizens, so use fear, violence, aggression to control them. Okay? Now, remember, Maat is the goddess of order, and order is attained by chanting the sound of order that will awaken your natural intuition about it. And what you'll see is order is gotten when you recognize that every system has parts, and the parts must cooperate with each other and with the whole. And this is what a cosmology teaches you, okay, which is a set of absolutes that contain a set of relative principles, meaning although the value of a thing or an event is derived from its relation to other things or events, its relation to the whole is absolute. Okay? And she was the goddess of the two truths called Maati, meaning there is a spiritual, psychological truth, and there's a material truth. There's the science of divine psychology and the science of physics, chemistry, etc. Okay? So when you have Ra, a strong life force developed, he will give birth to the capacity to live in teamwork, loving, cooperative, kind, fair, just, and righteous teamwork with others. You learn to play with others at a very high level. Okay? So, Ra is what's going to save the day. So we're going to end with a few calls to action. Number one, you need to, in these times, protect your life force. So get good sleep, eat as best as you can, and give your body good rest. Let the life force go to rest at night and wake up in the day. Start controlling your sleep patterns better. Eat as best you can, and think of sunlight often. Go outside in the sun and think of there is light. Beyond all the politics, there is light. Never look at the sun, of course, but you can feel its rays. You can see its rays come through your window. Okay? And I want you to say the sound Ong Rang Bahas Karang. Ong Rang Bahas Karang. Ong Rang Bahas Karang. This brings light, the solar light into your life. Okay? Keeps you optimistic, keeps your energy up and at 'em. I would also love for you all to stand up if you're able to. Put your arms left to right with palms facing the sky. So extend your arms left to right, all as with elbows flat, unbent. And you're going to slowly swing your sky-facing palmed hands inward. You're going to inhale. Let me see. You inhale, and the arms come close to each other. They kind of start swinging in towards each other on a horizontal. And I want you to get about a half an inch away. They must not touch. The two pinky sides of the palms must not touch. You're going to feel a little electrical field there between the hands. Then you exhale, and the arms go out, swing out again, side to side, until it's left to right. You inhale, and you slowly swing the arms in. The key is to keep your arms straight at shoulder level. And then you exhale, you swing out. When they come in, they must not touch. They must almost touch, but they must not touch. And then you exhale, and you swing back out. Okay, so this in swinging, almost touching, out swinging, left to right. In swinging as you inhale, almost touch, then out swing, exhale. Keep your arms shoulder length, don't let them drop down or go too high up. Okay. And what this does is it actually strengthens the aura. It brings light and vitality and vibrancy, and most of all, protection to the aura. Okay? And this will protect you from being the victim of violence, from accidents, from getting stressed out if policies and programs are being decimated that you need. If you are trans, they're very much attacking the trans community. They're going to go after all gay people, and it's coming down the pike. And this can be quite stressful for people. So by thinking of sunlight, chant the sound Om, Rang, Bahaskarang, and by doing as long as you can, because your arms will tire and fatigue, but you want to do as many as you can. Start with maybe 9 or 10 reps, go up to 20 reps, and max out at maybe 30, 40. You're going to feel this kind of force field surround you of light that will help protect you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time or letting things get to you and harming you. The heart is also the center of light because love is the center of light. And in my realm, it's all love. So there's a sound called she, 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 she. You chant that sound a lot in your head or out loud if you have privacy and the time. This is the sound that protects you from shocks, sudden blows of fate, sudden shocks of life, from fear, horror, disgust, and terror. She, 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 she. You want to do it for about, let's say, 3 minutes at a time. I would do 50 3 times a day, that sound. She, 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 she. And you'll notice over time, things just bounce off you. You don't get shocked. You don't get the trauma of the shock. This is the anti-trauma Heka, word of power, that creates the fire of Ra in your heart to shield you from the traumatic blows of life, fate, surprises, whether it's a divorce, the horrors going on the news, the change of our government and its very vicious bent. This can all be very stressful and shocking to people. And I was told by the gods to give you help from Ra, the life force, the Kundalini force. The oracle said, we're going through a lightning storm. Lightning storms don't last, but they can be very cruel. They can hurt a lot of people. So you want to be careful in lightning storms. You don't be walking out in fields and holding up metal rods. Okay? But the way through the storm, the oracle said, is to continue doing your spiritual work to the light. Don't ever give up hope in the light within yourself and the light that can remove the shades and shadows of this world. Okay? And by praying to the sun as the source of light, and may its light, when you say Ong Rang Bhaskara, you sing your chant to the sun as the symbol of light on earth. That may all people of goodwill of the light rise up and shine, shine, shine through the darkness. Just because it's getting dark doesn't mean you must dim your light. You must shine even brighter to find your way and to guide the way for others. Like the sun, be strong, be steady. Don't let your light dim. Don't let others dim your light. Don't let the government, the cruelty, the meanness, the racism, the sexism, the transphobism, don't let any of that get your light. So you know what? You want to thank these dark forces for teaching you that you have to shine when it's most important. They are forcing the people of light, like you find people on this video. You are the light. Without you, it would be completely dark. So, radiate your light. Do these chants and sounds and meditations. Put your heart into the sun as the symbol that light cannot be killed. No cloud, no storm can blot out the light, cannot destroy it. And there is sun in you, sunshine in you, light inside of you. Okay? And the final part on all this is Ra is astrology charts. So I'm going to offer people to be able to purchase an astrology table. It's a table you're going to receive that gives you your luck, love, and protection dates, protection cycles, not dates, but cycles throughout the year. It'll be a little red table that tells you dates when you're more prone to accidents and more prone and more open to luck, love, and all kinds of good things like that. The accident one is very important because I want you all to be more careful that you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I'm going to put a link below where you can get these charts. It's for a year. You get a little table that gives you the year, and it has instructions on how to read it and how to interpret it. But I want you to be careful on your accident days because that's when things can hit you, reach you, that can be very dangerous or devastating or harmful. I want to use the science of Ra, astrology, in a very specific way to help you navigate your year so you don't tend to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and get in trouble and get attacked or that kind of thing. So that is Ra as the god of astrology, the sun signs, etc. With that, I love you all. The light loves you, and I know you love the light. It is now time we unite under the rays of the sun, the golden light of heaven, and say to shadows, shades, demons, and wicked things, you will never extinguish my light. I am the sun on earth. I am Ra with two legs on this planet. And I will radiate goodness, radiate hope, radiate faith, trust, love, and luminosity. I will light the way for myself and others. Your clouds cannot blot out the sun in me and in my heart. Maat, fairness, truth, justice, and love still live, and I will never let the flame of love, kindness, and justice die in me. Ong rang bahaskarang she. Never can you have my flame of light. And with that, in my realm, it is all love. Dwalin Hotepu.